Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So my name is Roshan Liu, and I'm the chair of the IEEE UFFC Society Education Committee. So it's our great pleasure today to introduce the first webinar in the virtual lecture education series. If we move on to the next slide. These lectures present a great opportunity to our members worldwide to learn and interact with our distinguished lecturers, star ambassadors, and others from the community. So you can find and register for future lectures on the upcoming event list on the UFFC Society online homepage. So the link is listed here. If we move on to the next page, a few details on our today's seminar. So a few housekeeping. So you can type in the questions by using the chat functions anytime during or after the lecture. So to be addressed in the following Q&A section. So the entire session will be recorded and placed on the Society's YouTube channel for future review and for those who are not able to join us today. I know the time is probably very early for some of you. And so please keep an eye on out for an email after the lecture with a very brief survey to share any suggestion or feedback you may have. That'll be very appreciated. And finally, we would like to thank you. If we move on to the next page, we would like to thank all the members. If we move on, yes, we would like to thank all the members of the Education and the Lecture Series Committee, so as well as our student representative for the effort launching the program. So especially thanks to Stephen Lee and also Adam, Maxwell, Colin, Brick, and Molly Brankin for their help with organizing the lecture, so as well as the video editing and the captioning. So by doing this, we are trying to do our best to make our lecture as accessible as possible. So with that, I will turn this over to our moderator, Shujin Zhang from University of Wollongong.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Roten. I'm very happy to just introduce Professor Fei Li as a speaker of this talk. Fei Li is a very talented young scientist. He is a professor at Xi'an Jiaotong University, Xi'an, China. He is serving as an associate director of the Electronic Material Research Lab in Xi'an Jiaotong University. From 2015 to 2018, he worked in the Material Research Institute of the Penn State University as a postdoc and research associate, co-supervised by Professor Longjing Chen and Professor Tom Schlott. His research mainly focused on the design, modeling, fabrication of high-performance piezoelectric and ferroelectric materials applied for medical imaging and transducers, piezoelectric actuators, and sensors. He also is an associate editor of the IEEE translation on UFFC. He holds 9 patents and has published more than 120 peer-reviewed papers in high-ranking journals, including Nature, Science, Nature Materials. He received the IEEE Ferroelectric Young Investigator Award, Star Ambassador Lectureship Award from the IEEE UFFC Society, and the Rose Coffin Powder Award from the American Ceramic Society. So just like Rochen just mentioned, the audience, we will play the pre-recorded videos, and if the audience needs to post in any question, please use the chat box. Otherwise, if your question is very long, you can use the raise hand function, and we can just unmute you and you can ask questions. And Professor Fei Li will be here in situ just to discuss, answer the questions. Thank you very much. And now, Colin, let's play the videos. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Fei Li from Xi'an Jiaotong University in China. I'm very glad to be here and give my presentation. First, I'd like to thank the IEEE-UFFC Society to give me this very valuable chance to introduce our recent research. Today, the title of my presentation is Recent Developments in Relaxor-PT Crystals and Ceramics. In this presentation, I will mainly focus on the piezoelectricity of the Relaxor Piezoelectric crystals and ceramics. This is the outline of my presentation. First, I will give a short introduction of Relaxor Piezoelectric single crystals. Second, I will analyze the contribution of polynanoregions to piezoelectricity for Relaxor Piezoelectric crystals. After that, I will show that the piezoelectricity of Relaxor Piezoelectrics can be further enhanced by engineering the local structure heterogeneity. Finally, I will introduce our recent work on the transparent Relaxor Piezoelectric crystals by piezoelectric domain engineering. Here is a short background of the piezoelectric materials. We can see from the figure that from the discovery of barium titanate, perovskite piezoelectrics has been the dominant piezoelectric materials for lots of piezoelectric devices, such as medical transducers and actuators. We can see from here at present, Relaxor lead titanate crystals exhibit the highest piezoelectric activity. Thus, in order to design new piezoelectric materials, we have to answer why high piezoelectricity is present in those Relaxor Piezoelectric solid solutions. Here, I give an example to show how piezoelectric devices benefit from Relaxor Piezoelectric crystals. By using the PM EDT crystals to replace PZT ceramics, the bandwidth and sensitivity of ultrasound transducers can be largely enhanced, which greatly benefits the image resolution, as shown in the figures here from the company of Philips. For perovskite piezoelectrics, the piezoelectric coefficient is actually related to spontaneous polarization PS, electrostatic coefficient Q, and dielectric permittivity epsilon, as shown in this equation. Now, let's make a comparison of Relaxor piezoelectrics and PZT ceramics. Generally, the spontaneous polarization PS is dependent on the Curie temperature, so Relaxor-PT may not have a higher PS when compared to PZT. The electrostatic coefficient Q is highly associated with perovskite structure and cation ordering. Generally, PZT has a much higher Q coefficient when compared to Relaxor-PT. Therefore, the high piezoelectric coefficient D in Relaxor-PTs should be attributed to the high dielectric permittivity. As shown in this table, we can see that Relaxor-based ceramics show much higher dielectric permittivity. Here, Relaxor piezoelectrics are marked by red colors, and the composition of all these ceramics are around the morphotropic phase boundary. So the first question is that does Relaxor and member lead to high dielectric permittivity in Relaxor piezoelectric solid solutions? We know that polynanoregions are present in Relaxors such as the PMN as shown in this figure. And the switching of polynanoregions under electric field could contribute to dielectric response. Generally, in Relaxors, due to polynanoregions contribution, there could be an obvious frequency dispersion of dielectric response. But in Relaxor piezoelectric solid solutions with MPB composition, as shown in here, the frequency dispersion is very small and it behaves like a normal piezoelectric material. Therefore, we need to know if polynanoregions still work in Relaxor piezoelectric solid solutions and if it really works, we have to know the mechanisms. Actually, there are already many works focused on this topic. This slide gives some phono studies. All these works argued that polynanoregions could make a significant contribution to dielectric and piezoelectric response of relaxer ferroelectric crystals. For example, Dr. Guang Yongxu proposed that PNR phono interaction may contribute to the ultra-high piezoelectric response of PZN-PT crystal. Dr. Fei Li did a comparison study for PZT and PM-PT crystals and suggested that the nanoscale structure heterogeneity is the main reason for the high performance of PM-PT crystals. Here is the low-temperature dielectric measurement on domain-engineered PM-PT crystals. We can see that there is a very interesting dielectric variation at low temperature, which is deviated from the phenomenological calculation. The authors of these papers argued that this variation may be related to the polynanoregions. To understand the contribution of polynanoregions, we did cryogenic experiments for Relaxor-PT crystals. Since the contribution of polynanoregions can be ruled out at low temperatures, we selected single domain crystals for this study because we want to exclude the possible contribution from domain wall motion. For the single domain crystal, transverse dielectric and shear piezoelectric coefficients are much higher than their longitudinal counterparts, so we focused on the transverse properties. This schematic shows the sample for measuring the transverse dielectric permittivity and the shear piezoelectric coefficient. To make sure our study comprehensive, we selected 3 typical ferroelectric phases: rhombohedral, all-rhombic, and tetragonal phase. As shown in the phase diagram, there isn't any phase transition below room temperature for all the 3 crystals. Here is the transverse dielectric behaviors in single domain crystals. We can see that there is a large increase of transverse dielectric permittivity at low temperatures. This variation is about 50% to 80% of room temperature values. Furthermore, dielectric relaxation is clearly observed in these figures. Here we can see that loss factor shows peak value in each figure, and the maximum temperature is increased with increasing the frequency. Similar to dielectric response, shear piezoelectric properties were also found to greatly increase with increasing the temperature from 50 Kelvin to 200 Kelvin. In order to explain the variation of dielectric and piezoelectric properties at cryogenic temperatures, firstly, we checked if there is any phase transition in the temperature range. As shown here, XRD results didn't show any evidence of phase transition at the temperature range from 50 to 300 Kelvin for all these crystals, rhombohedral, all-rhombic, and tetragonal crystals. We also did polarized light microscopy to check the phase transition. It shows the same results to that of XRD experiments, as shown here. The domain structures of these 3 crystals are not changed from the room temperature down to 100 Kelvin. Okay, now I'd like to give a short summary for our experimental results. We observed a low temperature dielectric relaxation behavior in relaxer lead titanate crystals. At a low temperature, there's a very big jump of dielectric permittivity for Relaxor-PT crystals. and this jump isn't associated with phase transition. Compared to conventional ferroelectrics, this jump can be recognized as a cornerstone for the high piezoelectric response of Relaxor-PT crystals at room temperature. In the following, I will use phase field simulation to analyze the mechanism for this phenomenon. To perform phase field simulation, we have to know the microstructure characteristic of Relaxor-PT crystals. The main characteristic is the local structure heterogeneity, as observed by diffuse scattering and TEM experiments. For example, diffuse scattering experiments showed that all rhombic polynanoregions are present in rhombohedral Relaxor-PT crystals. Thus, in our simulation, we consider the Relaxor-PT crystal as a nanocomposite. Here is some important information for the nanocomposite. This model refers to PZN 0.15 PT crystal. Ferroelectric matrix is said to be tetragonal phase. Polynanoregions are said to be all-rhombic phase. The current temperature of ferroelectric matrix and polynanoregions are 470 Kelvin and 620 Kelvin. Below current temperature, no temperature-induced phase transition exists in the tetragonal matrix and polynanoregions. The size of polynanoregions is said to be around 3 to 6 nanometer. Phenomenological parameters are fitting according to the macroscopic properties of the PZN 0.15 PT crystals. For example, the spontaneous polarization, dielectric permittivity at room temperature. This is the simulated microstructure for a 100-pole ferroelectric PNR composite at 100 Kelvin. The color represents the angle between polar vector and the 100 direction. In order to minimize the electrostatic energy, only polynanoregions with the polar vector of 110 and 1-10 exist in tetragonal ferroelectric matrix. The microscopic symmetry of the composite is still 4 mm, but the local symmetry could be very low in specific polynanoregions as shown here. This slide gives the microstructure variation with respect to temperature. At the temperature below 100 Kelvin, each polynanoregion almost keeps its original all-rhombic phase. This is governed by the Landau energy. With increasing the temperature, the difference of Landau energy between all-rhombic and tetragonal phase will decrease for polynanoregions. Thus, in order to minimize the total free energy, polynanoregions will start to transform to tetragonal phase. This means that the polar vector of polynanoregions is collinear with the polar vector of ferroelectric matrix. We call this state of polynanoregion as collinear state. As shown here, at 350 Kelvin, all polynanoregions are in collinear state. Here is the simulated dielectric response. The simulated temperature dependence of dielectric permittivity is very similar to the measured results. You can see here that when polynanoregions begin to be collinear in ferroelectric matrix, the dielectric response exhibit drastically increase as shown here. In order to understand the contribution of polynanoregions to transverse dielectric response, the microstructure variation upon perpendicular electric field is given here. We can see that there are two contributions of polynanoregions. For the non-collinear polynanoregions, they will be switched from one stable state to another under electric field. For 150 Kelvin, lots of blue polynanoregions will switch to red one as 010 electrical field is applied. For the collinear polynanoregions, we can see from the condition of 350 Kelvin. These polynanoregions are easy to rotate and will bring nearby lattice to rotate. Here is a movie for 150 Kelvin, by which we can clearly see the contribution from polynanoregions. Both two contributions will contribute to the dielectric response, while the contribution of polynanoregions switching is dominant. And this contribution will generate a quite a high level of hysteresis in the PE loop, as you can see here. Here is the movie for the case of 350 Kelvin. As you can see here, polynanoregions act as seeds to promote the polarization rotation process. Because there isn't any contribution from PN switching, we can see that the PE loop here is non-hysteretic. Okay, now we may have such a question. Why polynanoregions are much easier to be rotated when they are in so-called collinear state? We use a simple model to answer this question. As shown in this figure, there are some all-rhombic polynanoregions embedded in a tetrahedral ferroelectric domain. So some interfaces are present in such a heterogeneous system. Because of polarization discontinuity around the interfaces, there are considerable interfacial energies in this system, which include electrostatic energy, polarization gradient energy, and elastic energy. This interfacial energies favors tetragonal phase of those polynanoregions, because when they transform to tetragonal phase, the discontinuity of polarization can be minimized. So there is a competition between interfacial and Landau-Bock energies for those polynanoregions. As shown in this figure, when the interfacial energy is high enough, a highly flattened free energy profile could be achieved for the polynanoregions. At this time, these polynanoregions can be very easily rotated by external electric field or stress. Okay, now we can answer the question we proposed previously. Do polynanoregions still work in Relaxor ferroelectric solid solutions? The answer is yes. Polynanoregions could make a significant contribution to dielectric and piezoelectric responses in Relaxor-PT crystals. After the above work, we asked a question to ourselves again. Can we further enhance piezoelectricity in Relaxor-PT crystals by modifying local polynanoregions? Firstly, we did some simulation works. We found that by increasing the volume fraction of polynanoregions, the dielectric response can be further enhanced at a specific temperature range. And the loss maximum may also become larger, as shown in this figure. These results tells us that if we can find some approaches to further enhance the volume fraction of polynanoregions in Relaxor-PT, we can further enhance their dielectric and piezoelectric properties. In this work, we use doping strategy to enhance the structural heterogeneity for PM-PT ceramics. Based on TEM experiments, actually, this work is quite a long time ago from Dr. Hammer's group. They observed that rare earth elements could significantly change the size of B-side cation ordered regions, as shown in this table. Therefore, we think that a rare earth element may be a good choice for modification of the local structure of PM-PT. Well, the next issue is that which rare earth element is better. By phase field simulation, we know that a ferroelectric system with a higher level of heterogeneity may produce a larger loss maximum, dielectric loss maximum. So we first fabricate a PM28PT ceramics with different rare earth dopants, as shown in here. Summary doped PM28PT ceramics has the highest loss factor at a cryogenic temperature, so we focus our further studies on the processing and the composition optimization of summary doped PM-PT ceramics. Here are the piezoelectric properties of summary doped PM-PT ceramics. The highest piezoelectric coefficient D33 is around 1500, which is about 2 times higher than that of commercial soft PZT ceramics. Compared to P5H ceramics and PM-PT crystals, summary doped PM31PTs also have an improved temperature stability, as shown here. Thus, we think that summary doped PM-PT ceramics is a very good choice for the applications around the room temperature. To understand the high piezoelectricity in summary doped PM-PT ceramics, first we checked the low temperature phase transition of summary doped PM-PT ceramics. Based on the shape of 3 main diffraction peaks, we didn't see any phase transition at a low temperature. By structure refinement, only a very small variation of ferroelectric phase is observed. Then we checked the domain structure of summary doped PM-PT crystals. As you can see here, we didn't find a significant difference between these 2 ceramics. And the observed domain patterns are quite common for tetragonal ferroelectrics. So based on these experiments, it is very hard to explain the high piezoelectricity of summary doped PM-PT ceramics from the respect of phase transition or domain structure. As discussed previously, we think that the high piezoelectricity is associated with the enhanced local structure heterogeneity in summary doped PM-PT. We have 2 evidence for the enhanced structure heterogeneity for summary doped PM-PT ceramics. First is the low temperature dielectric behaviors. We can see that the dielectric loss maximum is increased with increasing the concentration of summary. Compared to phase field simulations, the loss can be attributed to the switching of heterogeneous polar nanoregions, as shown in here. The second evidence is from TEM experiment. Here, the colors of the lights represent the lattice parameter. The standard deviation of the lattice parameter is 8% for undoped PM-PT, while it is 18% for summary doped one, which indicates that the local structure is more heterogeneous in summary doped PM-PT when compared to the undoped PM PT. We also fabricated a series of summary doped PM PZT ceramics as shown here. Compared to state-of-the-art piezoelectric ceramics, summary doped PM PT show obvious advantages, especially for these two compositions. The piezoelectric coefficient D33 is 910 pico per Newton with a Curie temperature of 184 degrees centigrade, and the piezoelectric coefficient D33 is 720 pico per Newton with the Curie temperature very close to 300 degrees centigrade. Here are the results for summary doped PM and PT crystals. As expected, the dielectric permittivity and the piezoelectric coefficient are really high. The piezoelectric coefficient D33 is up to 4,000 pico per Newton, and at the field of 10 kilovoltage per centimeter, the strain is larger than 0.3%. This is really good for low field actuator applications. I have to note here that by doping rare earth element, the phase transition temperature TRT will be decreased. In the paper published in Science, the TRT is only 60 degrees centigrade. Well, by carefully tuning the composition at present, we can have a summary doped PMPT crystals with TRT of 85 degrees centigrade, and the D33 is still around 4,000 pico per Newton. Okay, now we know that polynanoregions or local structure heterogeneity are very important for piezoelectricity of ferroelectrics. Next, I will show the impact of domain structure on the piezoelectricity of Relaxor-PT crystals. Different from the polynanoregions, the compositions of different domains are the same. It is quite difficult to change the size of polynanoregions for a specific material. Well, the size of ferroelectric domains can be controlled by many approaches. For example, different polling process or specific annealing process by which we can change the size of domain. Actually, there are quite a lot of works trying to control the domain structure of Relaxor ferroelectrics by polling process to further enhance the piezoelectricity. For example, Dr. Dabin Li used the high temperature polling to engineer the domain structure of PIN PM PT crystals, and they achieved about 70% enhancement of piezoelectricity of the crystal. In addition, Dr. Yamashita and Professor Xiaoning Zhang's group reported that the piezoelectricity can be enhanced by using AC electric field to pole the crystals. Today, I will focus on the effect of AC electric fields on the domain structure, where we can see some very interesting phenomena. First, we did phase field simulations to study the domain evaluation during traditional DC polling and also AC polling. This is the simulated results for DC polling. We can see that after polling along the 001 direction, only 4 electric field favored Ramahido domains are present and formed a so-called 4R domain configuration. This is 109 degree domain wall, and this is 71 degree domain wall. This slide gives the simulated movie for AC polling. We can see that the domain size becomes larger during AC polling. and 71-degree domain walls are removed by AC electric field. Compared with the 71-degree domain walls, the density of 109-degree domain walls was almost not changed during the AC polling, as you can see from this movie. Here shows the free energy variation during AC polling. We can see that the free energy of the system is reduced during AC electric field polling. This is because that the energies arising from the discontinuity of polarization and strain around the domain walls drastically decrease as the domain wall density decreases. In other words, by alternating the polarity of the polling electric field, we can make a ferroelectric crystal to achieve a domain configuration with much lower free energy. That is a domain structure with an enlarged domain size or reduced domain wall density. This slide gives the birefringence imaging microscopy experiment for the AC and DC poled PM28PT crystals. Here the colors indicate the domains with different directions of polarization. It is clear that a very high domain wall density is present in DC poled sample, while the domain size become larger after AC polling. After 10 cycles of AC electric field, a nearly single domain pattern can be achieved in PM28PT crystal. In addition, we did XRD experiments to further check the results from optical experiment. We measured 222 reflections for 001-oriented PM28PT crystals. As shown here, AC poled sample shows a single and much sharper diffraction peak when compared to the unpoled and DC poled samples. This clearly indicates that the domain size of the PMMPT crystal becomes larger after AC polling. Because of the elimination of 71-degree domain walls, the AC poled crystals become transparent as shown here. This is a very interesting observation and indicates that we can now incorporate optical functionalities into the high piezoelectric PMMPT crystals. In addition, the piezoelectric coefficient was enhanced about 30% by AC polling when compared to the traditional DC poled samples. To understand the mechanism for the enhanced piezoelectricity of AC poled PMMPT crystal, we performed phase field simulations to calculate the piezoelectricity of PM28PT crystal with different domain size. This figure shows the variation of polar vectors around a 71-degree domain wall. For an ideal rhombohedral domain, the polar vectors are along 111 directions, and the angle between the polar vector and the 011 direction is 35.3 degree. However, the presence of 71-degree domain walls causes the polar vectors to rotate towards the 011 direction to minimize the polarization gradient energy and also elastic energy, as shown in this figure. With decreasing the domain size, the impact of the domain walls on the polarization becomes more prominent, resulting in a larger deviation of the polarization from the 111 direction. Because of variations in polarization, the free energy of the system is also affected. As shown here, the free energy profile becomes flattened by increasing the domain size, leading to that the enlarged dielectric permittivity and the piezoelectric coefficient. Here, based on phase field simulations, we certified that a larger domain size of rhombhoidal PM EDT crystal can result in a higher piezoelectricity. But we'd like to note here that for ferroelectric crystals, the relationship between the domain size and the piezoelectricity is related to many factors. For example, the symmetry of ferroelectric phase, the composition of the material, and also the polling direction. The domain size dependence of other ferroelectric crystals could be different from that observed in PM EDT crystals.
Okay, now I give a short summary of the work related to transparent Relaxor-PT crystals. In this work, we report a simple approach of using AC electric fields to simultaneously achieve near-perfect transparency and enhance the piezoelectricity for rhombhoidal PM EDT crystals. And we think that such transparent crystals are expected to find a wide range of applications in electro-optical mechanically coupled devices, such as photoacoustic image transducers as shown here, electro-optic modulator, transparent speaker, and also transparent actuators. By using the transparent PM EDT crystals, we designed a bimorph structured milling robot as shown here. We use ITO as the electrodes for transparent PM EDT crystal. This figure shows the comparison between the transparent bimorph device and the device made by conventional PM EDT crystal with gold electrodes. Here are two movies for the transparent milling robot. Due to the ultra-high piezoelectricity of the transparent PM EDT crystal, the transparent milling robot showed a traveling speed up to 300 mm per second. In addition, the minimal driving voltage of this robot is just 3 voltage, which was much smaller than that of the transparent milling robots based on dielectric elastomers.
Okay, now I shall summarize my presentation. Firstly, we clarified that in Relaxor-PT crystals, the presence of polar nanoregions is very important. The contribution of polar nanoregions to dielectric and piezoelectric responses is about 50 to 80% of the total response. This can explain why Relaxor-PT show much higher piezoelectricity compared to other MPP systems. Secondly, we further enhanced the piezoelectric and dielectric properties in Relaxor-PT ceramics and crystals by modifying the local polar regions. Finally, by domain structure engineering, we achieved both high piezoelectric coefficient and high light transparency in Relaxor ferroelectric crystals. These crystals may benefit many applications in near future, for example, photoacoustic imaging transducers and transparent actuators for haptic-related applications. In the end of my talk, I'd like to thank the co-researchers of my work. They are Professor Nan Zhang, Professor Zhuo Xu, and many other faculties and PhD students in our group in Xi'an Jiaotong University, and Professor Shujun Zhang, Professor Zhenxiang Chen from the University of Wollongong, Dr. Bo Wang, Dr. Tiannan Xiang, Professor Tom Schront, and Professor Longqing Chen from the Pennsylvania State University. Dr. Jun Luo and Sam from TRS Technologies in US, and Professor Zuo Guangye from Simon Fraser University, and also other researchers as listed in this slide. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Colin, for replaying the video, and thank you, Professor Fei Li, for the wonderful talk. Now we have 4 questions. So first, I will read the question from the chat box, and Professor Fei Li, you can answer that. Okay? Yeah, Fei, can you show your face there? Yeah. Hi,
Hello.
Fei. Can you? Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first question, I will read the first question from Yi
Okay.
Qin.
Mm.
Yeah. Thanks for your nice lecture. In your talk, some PNR would lead to high piezoelectric and dielectric properties. In AC polling case with option conditions, how do you think the PNR distribute in the Relaxor-PT crystals?
Okay, let me see. Is it polling case with option? How do you think are the crystals? So based on our experiments, I don't think there is any evidence to show that the PNR could be changed by the AC electric field polling. So this question is very good, but it's very hard to give correct. It's very hard to give a right answer to this question, because if you want to know the change of PNR, you should do some experiments like TEM during the AC polling. I think this experiment is really difficult to perform. Or maybe we can do some neutral deprecation method during the AC polling. But also, I think this is also very hard to do at present. So maybe I think to answer this question, we need more experimental data. Based on the phase field simulations, we do not see any changes during the AC polling. Any changes of the distribution of polar nanoregions during the AC polling.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Li.
Okay.
Because
thanks for the question.
Yes, the AC polling with different frequency is very tough to do the in situ measurement. Yeah. So the second one is from Jacob. Great talk. Thank you. I'm curious the method for measuring D33 about 2000 pg per Newton. The burning meter sometimes have a maximum measurable D33 around 2000. So values above this are presumably measured by other equipment or method.
Okay. Thanks for the question from Jacob. Actually, there's for the new equipment, you can measure the D33 up to 5000 pico per Newton. The equipment that only for 2000 pico per Newton, I think is a very old one. So we can still measure the D33 by burning count meter. I think the new version is the limitation is about 5000 pico per Newton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because for the D33 meters, I think for the old one, we also can just parallel connected to a capacitor, since the measurement range can be much higher than 2000. Okay, thank you. The third question is from Dr. Heng Li. And so is this your conclusion that it is possible to obtain a maximum piezoelectric properties related PT crystals with monodomain structure without the 71 and 109 domain walls?
Yeah. This is a very good question. Thanks, Professor Heng Li. Actually, we measured the monodomain structure, D33 of the monodomain structure. We pulled it along 111 direction and measured along the 001 direction. But we didn't get the higher piezoelectricity from this single domain sample. Actually, we have published a new paper in the advanced materials in the end of last year for discussing the domain size effect on the piezoelectricity. So maybe this is depends on the domain structure. For 109-degree domain wall, maybe it will benefit the piezoelectricity. So if we remove all the 109 domain walls, it's not good for the piezoelectricity. So this is really a good questions. Maybe we can discuss more when we see each other in person.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, Professor Fei and Professor Long Qing Chen, they published a paper totally fit modeling to discuss all the domain size and related to the piezoelectricity, advanced materials. Maybe Dr. Li can just read that paper and discuss with Fei when we meet together. Okay, so next question is still from Yiqing. So how high D33 are you expected for texture ceramics or the Relaxor-PT compositions with TRT larger than 85 degrees C? So you may not talk about the texture ceramic today.
Okay, thanks for the question. I know that currently many people they care about the textural ceramics. Based on our recent experiment, I think for the TRT is 85 degrees C. That's 85 degrees. I think the D33, the maximum D33 is around 1,200 to 1,500 pico per Newton. This is still much lower than that of the single crystals, because currently there are still many issues in the textural ceramics, such as the grains in the textural ceramics are not perfect along the 001 directions, and also some issues related to the domain size. As we can see that for textural ceramics, the domain size should be much smaller than the single crystals, because the grain is just around 10 micrometer. So I think this is an open question. We hope that maybe many years ago, the piezoelectricity of the textured ceramics could catch up that of the crystals. Okay. I think.
Thank you, Professor Fei. So the next question is from Professor Kenji Uchino. So related to Dr. Li's questions, I thought the lamination structure is important with certain optimized thickness. So it's a comment.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question from Professor Kenji Uchino. Yes, as I just talked, I don't maybe the 109-degree domain walls will benefit the piezoelectricity in Relaxor-PT crystals. Yes, I think there may be a certain optimized thickness of the laminar domain, of the laminar domain structures, and we have done some phase field simulations. There indeed for some ferroelectric crystals, if you want to have the maximum piezoelectricity, there is a moderate domain size. If the domain size is larger or become smaller, the piezoelectricity will get smaller.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Fei. So last question is Jacob. Yeah, Jack. I think for the D33 burning current meter now we can go up very large range for 1,000 pg per Newton, and we also can measure the D33, D31, and D15. So yeah, so please upgrade your D33 meters. Okay, so is there any questions from the audience? If not, I would like to ask a question. Yeah, Fei, we have many material systems showing relaxer behavior. So why lead-based, only lead-based relaxer ferroelectric shows a superior piezoelectric properties? There are many other material systems showing beautiful dielectric relaxation, but their piezoelectric property is so bad. Can you comment or explain this? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very difficult question because if I can answer these questions, we can have very good lead-free ceramics or crystals. I think this would be related to the lone pair characteristic for the lead-based ferroelectric, and also maybe related to the I still think the PZT system is magic. Yeah, we actually we didn't have a system with the similar morphotropic phase boundary like the PZT. For Relaxor-PT, it's a curved the curved morphotropic phase boundary, and so I think we still have to do much more experiment to find to answer your questions. Yes, this is a very difficult question.
Okay, thank you. So next question is from Dr. Yamashita. So about AC polling, when you try to make transparent PM EDT single crystal by applying AC field, which part of the single crystal plate shows the first transparency near the electrode or other portions of crystals?
Yeah, when you try to make transparent, which part? Yeah, this is a very good question. Thanks, Dr. Yamashita. And when we pull the crystals, the first, I think the center portion become transparent first. Generally, there's a clipping effect around the surface of the samples. Actually, we did quite a lot of works to eliminate the domain walls around the surface. Sometimes we cannot remove it, then we polish the surface part, the part around the surface. So generally for the center portion, it is easy to get it transparency. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Professor Fei. So Dr. Li have a question. Could you talk about your future work on Relaxor-PT single crystals?
Yes, yeah. I think Dr. Li asked me these questions from by the email. So first, we think we still working on the rare earth doped crystal because we think by this method we can get the crystals with homogeneous properties, because the segregation of the rare earth element will offset the property change induced by the segregation of the desiccations of the Relaxor-PT crystals. So I think this feature is very important for us to improve the property homogeneity for the Relaxor-PT crystals. Also, the other work we currently do is about to enhance the the caustic field for the Relaxor-PT crystals. We try to enlarge the caustic field without sacrificing the dielectric permittivity in the crystals. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Fei Li. So if there is no more question from the audience, it's almost the time. Thank you. Before concluding the session, I would like to thank Professor Fei Li for the videos, and also thank the organizer Colin, Molly, and Ru Chen, and also thanks all the audience for attending this seminar. So this seminar is recorded and will be played on the YouTube. So maybe a couple of weeks later, you can download and disseminate to your colleagues and friends and collaborators about this seminar. Now, we also encourage the audience to attend the future webinar. Maybe Ru Chen will announce it.
The next lecture is going to be on 3 May with Joel Harley on physics-informed guided waves ultrasonic machine learning. To register, you can visit the UFFCS website or see the link that's been posted in the chat.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining today.
Yeah, thank you. So Ru Chen, so we conclude this session.